How does a simple cartoon like The Simpsons keep predicting the future with eerie accuracy? From tech inventions to global events, their uncanny foresight has left fans and even experts speechless. Today, we're diving deep into the mystery to uncover whether it's pure coincidence, clever writing, or something much stranger. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the mysteries that baffle the world. In this video, we're unlocking the secret behind The Simpsons' jaw-dropping future predictions. We'll reveal the hidden clues, break down the most shocking examples, and uncover the science and conspiracy theories behind this decades-old phenomenon. When we talk about The Simpsons and its future predictions, we're diving into one of the strangest and most talked-about mysteries in pop culture. This animated sitcom has been running for over 3 decades, and in that time, it has somehow managed to call out future events with a level of accuracy that feels almost supernatural. Think about it for a second. A cartoon meant to make people laugh ends up becoming a timeline of events that actually come true in the real world. That's not just wild, it's mind-boggling. Let us start with one of the most famous examples, Donald Trump becoming President of the United States. Back in the year 2000, long before most people could have imagined Trump in the Oval Office, The Simpsons aired an episode called Bart to the Future. In it, they casually mentioned Donald Trump as a former president. At the time, it seemed like a silly joke. Fast forward to 2016, and reality suddenly looked like it had taken notes from a cartoon script. The internet exploded, media outlets covered it like crazy, and people everywhere started asking the same question: how on earth did The Simpsons know? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Take the invention of smartwatches, for example. In a 1995 episode called Lisa's Wedding, Lisa is seen talking to her fiancé through a watch, something that felt futuristic back then. Fast forward to today, and smartwatches are part of everyday life. It doesn't stop there. Remember when Disney bought 20th Century Fox? The Simpsons showed a sign in a 1998 episode that read 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Co. At the time, it was a funny gag. In 2019, it became real-life history when Disney actually acquired Fox for over $70 billion. And then there's the pandemic connection. In a 1993 episode called Marge in Chains, a mysterious virus from Japan, dubbed the Osaka flu, spreads across Springfield, causing panic and chaos. People even linked it to COVID-19 when the pandemic hit decades later. While it's not a perfect prediction, the parallels were uncanny enough to send the internet into a frenzy. The show has also seemed to predict technology that was once pure science fiction. Autocorrect fails? They showed it. Video chat? They showed that too. Even the discovery of the Higgs boson particle was hinted at in a 1998 episode where Homer writes a mathematical equation on a chalkboard. Years later, scientists confirmed that equation was eerily close to predicting the particle's mass. It's enough to make anyone pause and wonder, are the writers time travelers, or is this just some cosmic joke? What makes all of this even stranger is the sheer number of predictions. 1 or 2 coincidences might be easy to dismiss. But when you start listing them out, the Siegfried and Roy Tiger attack in 1993, before it happened in real life in 2003, FaceTime-style video calls, the Shard building in London appearing in the skyline years before it was built, even the scandal involving FIFA corruption, it starts to feel like the show ISN, just reflecting reality but somehow shaping it. Fans have gone deep into this rabbit hole, creating entire YouTube channels, Reddit threads, and TikToks dedicated to cataloging every prediction the show has ever made. Some people even watch old episodes searching for the next big event hidden in plain sight. They call it the Simpsons prediction effect, a pop culture phenomenon where each new coincidence adds fuel to the fire, making the mystery even bigger. What's interesting is that The Simpsons never made a big deal out of any of this. These weren't storylines designed to be prophetic. They were jokes, background gags, or throwaway lines. But once the real world started catching up to Springfield, people began treating the show like some kind of crystal ball. News channels ran segments on it, conspiracy theorists claimed the writers had insider knowledge, and even celebrities started weighing in on how a comedy cartoon was shaping conversations about the future. The truth is, the phenomenon has taken on a life of its own. It's no longer just about whether the predictions are intentional or accidental. It's about how audiences respond to them. Every time the show seems to get it right, it strengthens the belief that there's something bigger happening here. The more people talk about it, the more it grows. It has become part of the show's identity, a mystery inside the comedy, and something fans can't stop analyzing and arguing about in every corner of the internet when people talk about The Simpsons. And its uncanny ability to predict the future, one big question always comes up. What's really happening inside the writer's room? Is this all some lucky string of coincidences, or is there an actual method behind the madness? Because let's face it, when you look at the long list of things the show seemed to predict years in advance, it almost feels impossible that it's all random chance. But the real story might be even more fascinating than any conspiracy theory. The Simpsons writers' room has always been a gathering place for some of the sharpest minds in comedy and satire. Many of the writers aren't just funny, they're incredibly well-educated. We're talking about people with degrees from Harvard, math whizzes, even folks with backgrounds in science and politics. These are people who live and breathe culture, trends, and current events, and they know how to turn all of that into razor-sharp humor. When you've got that level of intelligence working together for over 3 decades, it starts to make sense that some of their ideas might accidentally brush up against the future. Think about the creative process for a second. Every episode begins with brainstorming sessions where the team throws out wild ideas, often exaggerating real-world events or imagining what might happen if things keep going the way they're going. Their job is to take something from today, stretch it to the extreme, and make it funny. And sometimes, the world just catches up to their jokes. Take the Smartwatches example from earlier. Back in the 90s, wearable technology wasn't exactly common, but it was a concept floating around in science fiction and tech discussions. The Simpsons writers took that idea, added a comedic twist with Lisa's fiancé talking into a watch, and moved on. They weren't trying to predict anything. They were just riffing on possibilities. But then, decades later, when companies like Apple and Samsung made smartwatches a reality, suddenly it looked like The Simpsons had been ahead of the curve all along. Another important thing to remember is that The Simpsons has produced over 700 episodes. That's an insane amount of content. With so many storylines, jokes, and background gags, it's almost inevitable that some of them would overlap with real life eventually. It's the law of probability at work. The more guesses you make, the better your chances of getting something right. But because The Simpsons is such a huge cultural phenomenon, the moments that do come true get highlighted, shared, and celebrated like crazy, while the thousands of things they got wrong just fade into the background. But here's the thing that makes it really interesting. The writers themselves have talked about this in interviews. They've said over and over that they're not psychic, they're not time travelers, and they don't have secret government connections feeding them information. What they do have is a keen eye for trends and a willingness to push ideas to their most extreme, ridiculous limits. When you predict something wild enough times and the world takes enough twists and turns, eventually reality starts looking a lot like your jokes. At the same time, you can't ignore how intentional their satire is. The Simpsons has always been more than just a comedy. It's a mirror reflecting society back at itself. Whether it's politics, technology, pop culture, or human behavior, the show exaggerates things in a way that sometimes feels uncomfortably real. That episode with Donald Trump as president, it wasn't a random choice. Back in 2000, Trump was already a celebrity businessman known for his larger-than-life personality, so the writers used him as the ultimate what-if scenario for America's future. It was meant to be absurd, a punchline. But then it actually happened, and suddenly a joke became prophecy. This mix of social commentary and sharp observation might explain a lot. The writers look at the world, spot patterns, and imagine where those patterns could lead. They've done it with politics, with technology, even with environmental issues. And because the show has been running for so long, it has documented decades of human progress, scandals, and absurdities in one long, continuous timeline. When you see it all stitched together, it creates the illusion that The Simpsons has some mysterious insight into what's coming next. Some people even argue that the show might influence reality rather than predict it. When millions of people watch an idea on TV, does it plant a seed in someone's mind? Could a tech inventor, a politician, or even a company see a joke on The Simpsons and think, hey, we could actually do that? It's a wild thought, but culture and reality have always had a complicated relationship. Art imitates life, but sometimes life imitates art right back. And of course, the internet has made this whole phenomenon even bigger. Decades ago, if The Simpsons predicted something, only hardcore fans might notice. Now, the moment real life lines up with an old episode, social media explodes with side-by-side screenshots, conspiracy theories, and endless debates about whether the writers know something we don't. Every time it happens, it adds another layer to the mystery and keeps people coming back to search for the next hidden prophecy. When people talk about The Simpsons and its so-called predictions, they often overlook one thing that plays a massive role in all of this: probability. At first glance, it feels like magic, like the writers have some kind of crystal ball. But when you start breaking it down scientifically, you realize there might be a much simpler explanation hiding in plain sight. Probability teaches us that if you make enough guesses about the future, some of them are bound to come true sooner or later. And that's exactly what The Simpsons has been doing for over 30 years, making wild guesses wrapped in comedy, satire, and ridiculous scenarios. Think about the sheer amount of content this show has produced. Over 700 episodes, each packed with jokes, storylines, side gags, and cultural references. That's thousands and thousands of ideas thrown at the wall. In the real world, the law of large numbers tells us that if you make enough predictions, even if they're random, some will eventually align with reality. It's like flipping a coin 1,000,000 times. You might get 100 heads in a row purely by chance, even though each flip is independent. The same thing applies here. The more outrageous things The Simpsons throws into its universe, the higher the odds that some of those things will eventually stop being fiction and start looking like news headlines. But probability alone doesn't explain why these moments feel so shocking. That's where psychology comes into play. Humans are wired to notice patterns, even when they're just coincidences. It's called apophenia, the tendency to find connections or meaning in random data. We focus on the one accurate prediction and completely ignore the hundreds of things the show got wrong. That's why these coincidences feel more mysterious than they really are. It's not just about what happened. It's about how our minds interpret it. Now, add pop culture into the mix and things get even more interesting. The Simpsons isn't just any TV show. It's one of the most influential shows in history. It's been on air since 1989, shaping humor, politics, and even language itself. Entire generations grew up quoting it. So when it seems like The Simpsons predicted something big, it becomes part of a global conversation almost instantly. Social media takes it to another level. A single side-by-side meme of a real event next to an old Simpsons episode can go viral in minutes. People share it, debate it, make TikToks about it, and suddenly what might have been a small coincidence turns into an internet sensation. And then there's the cultural forecasting angle. The Simpsons writers are experts at observing the present and exaggerating it into the future. They don't need a time machine. They just need to be really good at reading the room. If a certain technology is emerging, like artificial intelligence or self-driving cars, they might imagine what would happen if it went mainstream. If politics is getting more absurd, they might imagine the most extreme scenario possible. Then, when reality eventually moves in that direction, as it often does, it looks like the show called it years in advance. Take the episode that hinted at the invention of autocorrect, for example. Back then, cell phones were still pretty basic. The writers took the idea of technology making our lives easier and twisted it into a joke about technology hilariously messing things up instead. Years later, when autocorrect fails became a universal experience, people looked back at that episode and called it prophetic. But really, the writers were just imagining a funny downside to an emerging trend, a downside that happened to come true. There's also something fascinating about how The Simpsons might actually influence the future instead of just predicting it. When a show as popular as The Simpsons puts an idea out there, it plants a seed in people's minds. Maybe a tech developer watches an old episode where Springfield has crazy futuristic gadgets and thinks, you know what, we could actually build that. Maybe a politician sees a parody of themselves on the show and leans into the persona a little more because it's already out in the public consciousness. Culture doesn't exist in a vacuum. Entertainment and reality feed off each other in ways that are hard to untangle. And let's not forget how conspiracy theories have fueled the hype. The internet is full of people claiming The Simpsons must have insider information, secret government ties, or even time travelers in the writer's room. Most of these theories are obviously tongue-in-cheek, but they keep the conversation alive. Every time something new lines up with an old episode, those theories pop back up, giving the mystery even more life. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. The show makes a joke, reality eventually catches up. People call it a prediction, memes go viral, conspiracy theories resurface, and suddenly everyone's talking about The Simpsons all over again. All of this creates a kind of feedback loop between probability, psychology, and pop culture. The more predictions people think they see, the more they look for new ones. The more they look, the more connections they find, even if those connections are just coincidences. And every time one of these moments goes viral, it cements The Simpsons as something bigger than just a cartoon. It turns the show into a cultural oracle, whether the writers intended it or not, and keeps the mystery alive for a whole new generation of fans who start wondering what the show might predict next. By now, we've gone through the predictions, the writing process, and even the probability behind The Simpsons' uncanny accuracy. But here's where things get really interesting. Because while logic and science can explain a lot, there's always that part of the human mind that loves a good mystery. And when it comes to The Simpsons, the mystery has sparked countless theories about how a simple animated show could keep seeing the future before it happens. Some fans genuinely believe there's something supernatural at play. The time travel theory is one of the wildest and most persistent ones out there. People joke half seriously that someone on the writing team must have access to a time machine, traveling forward, gathering information about the future, and then sneaking it into episodes for laughs. It sounds crazy, but when you look at side-by-side images of The Simpsons predicting things like FaceTime or the Shard Building in London years before they existed, it starts to feel like there's no other explanation. Of course, there's never been a shred of evidence to support this, but it doesn't stop fans from running with the idea. After all, the truth being boring, that it has all coincidence and sharp observation, just docent. Feel as satisfying as the thought that The Simpsons might be tapping into some kind of sci-fi mystery. Then there's the insider information theory. Some people argue that the show must have had connections to powerful people or secret organizations who knew about major deals, technologies, or political events before the public did. For example, when The Simpsons showed Disney owning 20th Century Fox years before the real-life acquisition happened, conspiracy theorists insisted that someone on the writing team must have had insider knowledge about the media industry. In reality, it was probably just a clever joke about the entertainment world, becoming more and more monopolized, but to some people, it looked like proof that The Simpsons was in on secrets the rest of us didn't know. Another theory dives into the concept of cultural influence rather than prediction. Maybe The Simpsons isn't predicting the future at all. Maybe it's shaping it. When millions of people watch a show for decades, it seeps into the culture in ways we don't always notice. Politicians, inventors, and business leaders grew up watching The Simpsons just like the rest of us. So when the show puts an idea out there, even as a joke, it might plant seeds in the minds of people who have the power to actually make those ideas real. Maybe someone saw the show's take on video calling, self-driving cars, or digital currencies and thought, hey, why not? Over time, fiction inspires reality, and reality catches up to fiction. It wouldn't be the first time art has influenced the world. Science fiction shows like Star Trek famously inspired real-world technology like cell phones and tablets. Maybe The Simpsons has been doing the same thing, only with a sharper, funnier edge. Psychologists have their own theories too, focusing on how our minds process coincidences. There's this concept called confirmation bias, where we tend to notice and remember the things that fit our beliefs while ignoring the things that don't. When The Simpsons seems to get something right, it blows up online, spreads through memes, and sticks in our memory. But nobody talks about the thousands of jokes, gags, and storylines that never came true. Our brains filter those out, focusing only on the hits and forgetting the misses. Over time, it creates the illusion that The Simpsons has an unbroken streak of predictions when, in reality, it's just a handful of coincidences scattered across hundreds of episodes. Still, that doesn't stop people from connecting the dots in increasingly elaborate ways. Entire YouTube channels and Reddit threads are dedicated to cataloging every supposed prediction, big or small. Fans scour old episodes frame by frame, looking for hidden clues about what might happen next. When something in the real world lines up with the show, it gets added to the growing list of prophecies, feeding the belief that The Simpsons is some kind of cultural oracle. It's become a self-sustaining cycle where the more people look for predictions, the more they think they find. And of course, the internet has supercharged all of this. In the pre-social media era, these coincidences might have been fun trivia for hardcore fans. Now, every time a major event happens, people rush to post screenshots of a Simpsons episode that looks even vaguely similar. Side-by-side images go viral on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, turning coincidences into global talking points overnight. The show's reputation as a predictor of the future grows bigger with every meme, until it feels less like a comedy series and more like some kind of modern-day oracle wrapped in yellow animation and sarcasm. Yes, it makes us question the future, question reality, and maybe even question ourselves. What is fascinating is how The Simpsons itself has leaned into the mystery over the years. The writers know about the conspiracy theories. They've joked about them in interviews and even in the show itself, adding a layer of self-awareness to the whole thing. It's almost like they enjoy watching people debate whether they're psychic, time travelers, or just really, really good at reading the culture. And maybe that's the secret ingredient. The show is in on the joke, with the rest of us blurring the line between coincidence and commentary, between prediction and parody, until nobody can tell where one ends and the other begins. So, after looking at the shocking predictions, the genius inside the writer's room, the science of probability, and all the wild theories fans have created, one thing becomes clear. The Simpsons isn't just a cartoon. It's a cultural phenomenon that has managed to blur the line between fiction and reality in a way no other show has. Maybe it's not time travel. Maybe that's not secret insider knowledge. Maybe it's just what happens when you combine brilliant writing, decades of satire, and a world that's often stranger than anything on TV, because at the end of the day, The Simpsons has given us more than just laughs. It's given us a mystery that keeps people talking, keeps the internet buzzing, and keeps fans watching old episodes wondering what could come true next. And that's the real genius of it all. The show doesn't just entertain,